Hi everyone, welcome. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the most important concepts in Terraform called Terraform Module. Okay, so in this video, I will capture what is Terraform Module. Okay, why do we need Terraform modules? Okay, and again, we're going to talk about the type of module. All this thing will be backed by hands-on demonstration. Okay, so Terraform module, in a nutshell, is a way that you can package your resource in such a way that it's reusable, it's self-contained, and it's a Terraform config file so that you can define your own infrastructure in kind of a single unit. Right. So that is it. What are the types? Again, this definition will be explained much more clearer when we do the hands-on demonstration. So what are the types of the module that we have? So when you are already working with Terraform, you are working inside the folder already, or your working directory. That itself is a module. So we call that a root module. Okay, so that is the main Terraform config where you normally run your plan and then apply from. Okay, we also have what we call the child module. So the child module will be called by the root module. Okay, so you are the child, it's like a subfolder. So the bigger folder or the root folder will call the subfolder. Basically, that's what it means. So child module will be called by the root module or the parent module. Okay, and then we have what we call the remote modules. So these are the stuff that are not in your local environment. These are the remote ones, okay, stored externally. You can find some of them in what we call your Terraform registry or your GitHub, your S3 bucket, anything that is external. Okay, that is what we call the root, or sorry, the remote modules. So I think it's much easier when we dive into the practical side of it or the demonstration. So please hang on when we get this kind of concept out of the way. So again, why do we need module? Think about it. You do not want to be repeating writing your code over again and again and again. Okay, when you have one resources, you want to have a single unit that you call a source of truth that you can call upon every now and then to deploy your resources. Again, for consistency, if you want to have a standard enforce a standard way of your infrastructure deployment, you leverage on module. Okay, and again, it's easier to maintain. By that I mean, when you have your module, you can make a change at a single place and you can deploy it. It can affect the rest of the environment going forward. Okay, again, it will help you abstract, basically complexity. You can make your module more simpler and you abstract all the complexity behind the scene. Okay, so let's quickly dive into the demonstration for me to explain um, the modules whilst we doing this. Okay, so right, this is what I mean by root module. Right, so when you create your Terraform files, it's sat inside a folder. So this folder, I call it simply done. Okay. Inside this folder, I've got my file main.tf, provider.tf, variable.tf. This folder, okay, is what we call the root module. Okay. This is where I can run my Terraform plan and apply from. Okay, inside of this folder. Simply done. Okay. That is it. So in here, I'm creating a resource. I am user and I'm also creating what we call a keys for it. Okay, access keys for the user. Okay, right. So it's nice and easy. I can quickly run plan and apply on this. Okay, I've created a user. Think about it. If I need to create another user, okay, with the same resource and then again create access key. So if I'm getting multiple requests for this user creation and access key creation, so I need to basically repeat this code. Yeah. So for a different user, I'll copy that. Okay. Come here. Let's say for different user, come here, put it here, make changes to the username. Okay, make changes to the username and then few changes here. Okay, if another person come in, I'm going to repeat it. So to avoid the repetition, so we leverage on the module. So imagine if I have to do this, several times. Another user comes in, come in here, make a change to the name, and then again change the user here for the keys. Okay, so with all this, you see I'm kind of repeating myself. Okay, to avoid the repetition or duplication of this resource creation, this is where we leverage on modules. So in that case, I will just leave this out. Let me remove what we've just done here. This one, I'll remove that out of the way and keep our existing code. Happy so far? Right. So this is what we have. How can we create a module? Like I said, this itself is a module. What we have here is a module. So we need to create ourselves a single unit of our resource infrastructure that we can deploy as many times as we want. How do we do this? So we're going to create what we call a child module. Okay, in a nutshell, I'm going to create a subfolder within this folder. Yeah, within this folder, and I'm going to call it whatever I want. Let's say this is more to do with IAM. We're going to name it like module IAM. Okay, so what you can do, you can create a bigger folder and put another subfolder into it, whichever way you want. Okay, so you can say, right, I'm creating a module, but let me call this module. Okay, so you know that any files or folder you're going to put into this folder, you're going to call the folder a module. It doesn't necessarily have to be called a module, but let's name it as a module, for example. Okay, it doesn't have to be a module. Okay, actually, let's disregard calling it a module. Let's call it infra. Okay, something like that. Okay, so within this infra, I can create another subfolder in here. Okay, and that folder, so every resource that is to do with infrastructure creation, I'll put in infrastructure or infra. Yeah, so in here I can create another subfolder, but this time let me call it IAM because I'm creating IAM here. So let me call it IAM. Okay, and then I'll go enter. So infra IAM. Okay, right. So I'm going to move all this resource into the IAM folder. Okay, so in here, let me just create a file. So to create a module, okay, the files that you need, remember, it is a configuration files that you need to put in there. So first of all, I will say I need main.tf. It could be any one. You can call it im.tf or something. So main.tf. Okay, enter. Okay, so remember that comes under the IAM. I can create another one. Okay, and I can call it variable. So it's a reusable unit. So variables.tf. Okay, enter on that. Okay, so I can also add more like output.tf. Okay, normally you add output.tf. These are the basic one that you need. So output.tf, and then you might be wondering why do you need the output. So the output will expose the information about the resource within the module. Okay, I will show you that. So we got this file structure here. What we need, I'm going to literally put the IAM resource. I'm just gonna remove everything from here. Okay, let's cut this completely. Give me a second. Okay, let's cut it completely from here. Let me cut it, and then I'm gonna put it into the main.tf. Okay, under the IAM. Okay, under this IAM. All right. So I'll put it here. No problems. Happy days. Can you see it's all highlighted? So it's looking for the variable. Okay, the variable.tf. So what again I will do is I'll copy all this. Okay, let me copy all this and put it in, where is it? Variable.tf. Paste it here. Happy days. Can you see the highlighted one is gone now? It's all clean. It's looking for the counterpart and it found it. Happy days. Right. So we got that. What else? So for provider, let's leave the provider as. So the provider will sit at the root folder, in other words, at the root module. Okay. So which is that one? It's sat in here. Okay. Right. And we got nothing in the main.tf. Right. So here, this is all the configuration that we need to create IAM user with access key. Okay. So we got this access key, secret key that we are creating for the user. So in order not for me to repeat myself, I have modularized this. Okay. Now what I need to do, okay, is to come to the root. So the root folder or the root module is going to call the child module. Okay. How are we going to call this? Watch this. Okay. So in our main, we're going to say module. Okay. Module. You specify the word module, and then you give the module a name. It could be any name you want. Okay. So let's call this, let me say max dev, something like that. Okay. I call this module max dev. And what we need is the source, right? We have various source. Okay. We have a local source. Okay. You can have the remote source. Okay. I will show you all the remote sources. The remote source, you can source some from your GitHub. You can source it from the registry, like I showed you in the beginning. Okay. So these are the source. The source we have created now is called the local source. Why? Because I have created the module locally. Okay. It's in here. It's not remote somewhere. So this is local. So I'm sourcing it local. So I'll say source. Okay. And then what is the source? I need the root path. Where is the module stored? Which folder? What is the root? What is the path to follow in order to get to that resource? Okay. So watch this. If I put the cursor on that, can you see this is what we call the full path. Okay. So my workspace, simply done Terraform YouTube /dan/infra/IAM. That is it. Okay. But as you can see, I am currently in simply done. So if I do ls here, okay, so this is where I'm sat. But the other folders, the IAM is sat in infra. Okay. So now let me call it. Okay. So if I do my present working directory, which is period, okay, full stop, and then you see automatically, because I've got an extension, Terraform extension here, this bit. If you don't have it in your VS Code or what we call your cursor or anything like that, you can install that extension, and straight away can you see I've got IAM here. Happy days. That is it. So literally I can run this Terraform plan, and what it's going to do is Terraform is just going to look at the path. Okay, it's going to read it from this line module, max dev, go to line number 2. Where is it stored? So where is the source? It will go to my present working directory, look for this folder infra, and then inside this infra is just going to use all the resource inside of that. Okay, which are these ones. Everything in here is going to be provisioned. Okay, that's what we have here. Okay, so literally I can run plan on this, but before I run the plan, you have to initialize. Okay, you have to install, basically download the module, and then the plugins as well. So we have to do Terraform init. Yeah, so we will say um, Terraform, we are going to initialize it. Yeah, Terraform init. Okay, so once you initialize that, so can you see we initializing the backend, and then it's initializing the module. If you don't initialize the module, it's not gonna work. Okay, so now what we can do, we can run plan on this before we deploy it. Okay, so we say Terraform. Okay, if you plan against this, let's see what's gonna get. So now you see I'm in my current folder and I'm planning it against that. Okay, nice and easy. Can you see that? Now, if I want to, okay, customize it, by that I mean, you see, this all variables, okay, these are now used by the root module. So basically, it's using the default values. All these values are getting used as default. If I don't want this, I can override them, okay, at the module level. So there are levels where you can override your default variables. One of the places is under the module. You can also override it, okay, at the what we call the terraform.tf vars. You can also override it on the command line, okay, and where else again? And the environmental variable, you can also override it there. So let's override these values. So we say name is now, okay, literally I left it like empty, don't put any name there. So I can override it at the module name, and at the modules here, so the name, okay, I will say um okay, the name, okay, let's call the name Dan, something like that, yeah, Daniel will do. Okay, so literally I can override this. Okay, instead of the now, as you can see here, now I can say Terraform, okay, and I'm planning against that again. Okay, now I'm overriding the default values that are in the module. Okay, now we call Daniel. Okay, literally all the variables can be overwritten in the main.tf in the modules. Okay, so this is how we do this. So the export, if you want to export anything, okay, by that I mean, you see this resource, or the information or the attribute about this resource, like the name, the path, you see, anyway, these are the attributes. You see these ones, yeah, this attribute, if you want to use this output somewhere else, okay, to expose the output, you need to expose the information about the resource inside the module or the child module, you leverage on the output. So if you, let's say you want to output anything like um let's say the ARN, so the user ARN, so user ARN, okay, let's say user underscore ARN, if you want to use that, okay, somewhere else, okay, we literally exposing that, you say value, okay, and then you give the user that one dot, see, that's exposing. So you want the ID or the name, literally you are exposing that. Okay, here we go. So literally you are exposing that. If you want to um let's say in the main.tf, okay, here, if you want to get the output or to use the output, you can call it here. Okay, how do we call it? Let's say if you want to um get an output of the ARN from here, you will say output. Let's say the output. Where is it? Okay, output. And let's say user ARN. Okay, user ARN. So we will say the value will be what? Module. This module dot user ARN. That one. So literally, this ARN has been exposed already under the output here. That's why when I type it, you see it coming. So literally the output name, okay, we are exposing the ID on here. That's why we saw it here. So the output user, okay, the value is module. So it's gonna go through the module max dev. And what are the attribute that has been exposed? The attribute, the output that we have exposed is the user ARN, and it's in the output.tf. Okay, so this is ways of working with module how you can handle, certain values that you would like to output. It's very important to also add output.tf inside your child module. Remember, here, let's interpret this. So a parent module, okay, root module here, this module simply done, has called on a child module. The child module is the IAM, okay, and we call this the local module. So in the local module, we have the child module and then the root module. Right. Let me move quickly to what we call the remote modules. So they are resources that have already been packaged already, ready to be used. And some people have already published them in the registry, like the Terraform registry. Some of them, if you have your own GitHub repository or S3 bucket or Bitbucket or any version control system and you have published your code in there, you can use it. So let's, pick one of them. Actually, let's do all of them. Let's do sourcing a module from a GitHub repository. So let's go to my GitHub. I'm just gonna source something from there. Where is it? Here. So I've got this. Which one is that? CloudTrail. I've got this Terraform repository here to do with. Yeah. So what I need is I'll copy the uh, the URL HTTP. That's fine. I'll copy it, come back to my code here, and then what I need to do is I'm going to call that module. I'll say module again. I'm calling the module. Give it any name. Let's call it S3. Was it S3? Let's put a name here, dev. Any name here, dev. Any name will do. The source, okay, put a source in here, and remember the source name. Let me put it here. We can make certain adjustment. Put it here, okay. Right. So let's see, will this work? Probably not. So if you look at the documentation, where is this module? Not this one, module, this one. Right. If you want to use a module, okay, in Git or GitHub, okay, so you have option. Either, okay, let me see. Right. Either you use Git and then you bring the sign to dot dot and then the HTTP and the full GitHub URL, okay? Or you can ignore the whole of that and just put, where is that one? Let me just show. I think I saw it somewhere. Yeah, and just use something like that. GitHub, okay, and then the URL of your version control, something like that. Okay. Again, refer back to the documentation here called module block. It tells you whichever way. If you want to use SSH, okay, there's a way that you can use SSH, that one. Okay, we are not using SSH. So, like I said, you can either use, what is that one? This one. So you bring this sign in front of the URL that I've copied. Okay, here, come back here. You can add that at the beginning. Here, let's paste it here. Okay. Or if you want, you can disregard all of this and just use that. You can disregard this one, the one I've highlighted, and just use github.com and then the whole path. Okay. Whichever one suits you, you can use that. Okay. So at the end, if you have, so sorry, on here, if you are using just, actually we will try, let's try that. So let's leave this one. This is one way of doing it. The other way is to, let's copy that. Let's copy that quickly. Drop it down here and then paste it here. The other way is to ignore all this and then at the end to ignore the get at the end. So you are not referring to the get. Okay, that should be fine. Okay, so these are the two of using the GitHub and calling the source. Okay, this is what we have. Another one is to use the registry. You can go to Terraform registry and pick a source, okay, and use it. So these are the code that has already been written. So if you look at mine, where is that? GitHub. Click on that. Okay. So this code has already been written, yeah, and I'm just literally gonna source it and use it. Okay. Right. Again, one more thing. Can you see the branch? You can add the branch as reference. Okay. So if you look on the registry, can you see the ref? Okay. You give the path and you add the ref at the end. Okay. Now let's keep that. Let's go to Terraform registry and pick. Let's say I've got VPC. So we got modules. Um, let me go back. Let me go back to the registry to show you. So you see we got modules. Okay. Or you go to your provider first, AWS, okay, and then you can have various modules. You pick VPC, okay. You see the versions, you can version it, pick a specific version that you want. Okay, if you want the latest, you pick. Let's say if we pick any of that, like that one. Um, let's pick that one, for example. Can you see the version position has changed? We can copy that and then go back to your IDE. I'm going to paste that one here. If you need to make changes, we'll make it. Paste it here. Okay. So again, look at the source path. All you need to say is Terraform and then the provider. So Terraform provider and then the module path. That's it. So you are versioning it. So basically this version, you're going to be stuck with it. Okay. You don't want any upstream change to affect your code. So you version it. Okay. Right. So now let's initialize this because it's a new module. Any new module, you need to, download the module. So we will say to download it, we will say Terraform init initialize, yeah, to download the plugins, right? So here it's asking you your, oh, what's that? Not that one. Try and get my password right. Okay. See now you see, right, that module, let me see, already the name dev. All right, okay. So here, let's fix the error. So I've got the module name has to be different because I'm using the same module name. Let's call this QA. That will do. And then let's do the initialization again. Okay, let's see. Enter. So the backend is getting initialized. All right, let me do this again. Try and get there. Okay, the backend is initializing. Like I said, I'll do a separate video about backend, a full-blown video on that. Backend is initialized. All the plugin has been downloaded. We're cooking on the gas. Okay, now if you run Terraform, what are we doing? Terraform plan. Let's plan this first. Okay, plan that. Okay. Mm, okay. You see, now these resources are getting created. Okay, can you see the VPC? I didn't create that. It's sourcing it from the registry. This is the external source. Okay, the external source are from the registry, which we are using, sourcing the VPC, and then you can source it from GitHub. So my own GitHub or any GitHub. Okay, I'm sourcing them from. If you want to make any changes, you can add any variable that you want to add. You can make that changes to it. You can configure it to suit your use case. Okay, so this is the reusability of Terraform module. Again, you see this module I created for the user. If you want to reuse it, you can reuse it again and again. I can call that module several times as I want. I can say module again. Okay, and this time we call it, I call this mass and then QA or something. Okay, and the source again. Okay. Um, infra, that's fine. But at this time, it's a different person's name that we are creating. So what we need to do is name, and it's called, let's give done. Let's put done there. Need a quotation on that. So let's say done. Okay. Daniel Kiwi. I like that one. uh, okay. That is fine. Again, you see, I'm reusing it. I can call it again and again as long as I provide a different module name. I'm cooking on the gas, no dramas. Okay, so if I run a plan again, remember it's a new module, I have to reinitialize it. So if I say Terraform in it, always remember to reinitialize your module. Okay, so press enter. Backend is getting initialized. And what does it mean? So it means all the modules are getting downloaded, plugins are getting plugged in and connected, and you are getting ready to cook on the gas. Okay, so the plan on this should work. I hope this video is helpful. You need this as a Terraform engineer, not Terraform engineer, cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, whatever role or you are interested in writing Terraform code. There's no way you could get away by not understanding Terraform module. So in a nutshell, this is a simple one for you to understand what a module is about. If I should take you back to the slide or what we were talking about, probably that will throw more light on what we've done. Remember, we said Terraform module. These are what we call the reusable self-contained. Okay, we contain the IAM. Okay, Terraform configuration files that you can help to define your resources as a single unit. Okay, and with that, what we will do is to have what we call the various types. So we've seen the root module. Okay, the root module is where we run our Terraform plan and apply from. It contains the main Terraform config. Okay, so the root module will call a child module. The child module is like the subfolder that contains all the, the logical unit, the units or the of the infrastructure that you need. Okay, so the root will call the child. The child will all have the information, and then the root can also inject certain values that it want to override what the default values in the child module has been defined. Okay, and again we have what we call the remote modules. So these are the modules that have been stored externally, like the GitHub. We've seen it, the one we've just provisioned, and then we have some in what we call the Terraform registry. Okay, and remember the importance of it. Okay, so for the reusability of your code, you want to avoid duplication of your code, and you saw that. Okay, um, for consistency, right? Remember, you can change the source or the child module, and then the parent or the root module, you do less on that. Okay, so you to enforce standard, you need to ensure that your consistency comes across all your environment. And for maintainability, okay, easy to maintain, you change it one place and you can use it everywhere. And remember, we abstract the complexity and put it in the subfolder or the child module. Okay, I hope this helped. Okay, if you have any question or you're not sure of anything, please put it in the chat in the comment section or email me and I'm happy to assist you. If you want a full blown, lesson on modules, I'm happy to dive into that. Okay, all right, then I will see you in our next video. Happy learning. Enjoy. Bye bye.